Sooner than Ichijo anticipated, Sugita called him in early July, wanting the two to meet. They arrived at Akihabara Station, eventually making their way to a modest-looking bar not too far from Showadori Avenue. "Is this the place? What do you think? Did you expect something else?" "No, it's fine. I never really cared about the specific place, as long as it's good for drinks. So, I always find the cheapest spots, but, you get what I mean." Ichijo imagined back to their younger days when Sugita would drag him around uncomfortable places in the city center, only to be surprised by them. Back then, Sugita would take him to various bars, where kimono-clad girls would circle around serving drinks, or women dressed as busy nurses with glasses of medicine in hand. Those were all places Ichijo couldn't stand. Once he was taken to a bar with girls sitting nearby, chatting away, but he rarely had a chance to converse with them. He tried to divert their attention with some simple magic tricks he learned in high school, but it didn't help much. Why spend money and buy happiness for those women anyway? Entering the bar's first floor, with only stool seats, they ascended a creaky wooden staircase, leading to the second floor, with a snug sofa chair set against the back wall. It felt like a private room, the quietness allowing for comfortable conversation without disturbance. These rooms were usually used by couples, but also often rented out for business gatherings. Ichijo lifted a glass of Yebisu creamy top stout, while Sugita switched to some diluted shochu. "My daughter just made me go through a health checkup. She keeps nagging that I should thin down if I want to drink." Amused by the charmingly grouchy man, keeping his word, Ichijo leisurely sipped his jinjo. Smoked cheese on a small charcoal grill emitted an unfamiliar atmosphere. "Is your mother still doing well?" "She's fine, thank you. She quit working at the hospital, but she can't sit still like before, so she's now a welfare worker for the ward. Sometimes, take her to a hot spring. You must have saved up quite a bit by now, find a room with a wooden tub or something." "I really haven't saved that much." "Really now? I know you always dodge relationship matters, so what are you planning to do with that money?" "I've been using it for personal training." "Seriously, still the same? Come on, just a little bit, spend it on a girl." "No, find yourself a girlfriend." "No, really, I'm fine." "No, you can't be fine like that. By the time you're as old as me, having someone by your side to care for you will be a huge motivation. So, you need to." Sugita paused for a moment. "Wait, are those rumors about you really true?" "What?" "The rumors that you don't have a girlfriend because you already have a man." "What?" Seeing Ichijo's stunned expression, Sugita burst out laughing. "No, absolutely not," and changed the subject. Ichijo wasn't interested in finding a girlfriend. He often gets bombarded with questions like, "When are you getting married?" Of course, Ichijo is used to it, but he never expected the conversation to take this turn. It's not that Ichijo hasn't dated other women before. Of course, he has feelings for them. It's just that he's never really progressed too far with any of them. Since high school, Ichijo started avoiding relationships like that. He became withdrawn and cautious about forming intimate connections with girls. It all started on Ichijo's 10th birthday, when events unfolded like a tragedy. On April 18, 1984, the weather in Nagoya had been beautiful since the day before, with a wonderfully clear sky. The rain from 2 days ago had raised the air temperature to 20 degrees, causing Japan to experience several heat waves. Little Kaoru had just returned from school and was puzzled not to find his mother Tomiko at home. She worked at the West Nagoya Hospital and should have been resting at home after her night shift. Then Kaoru noticed a note lying on the living room heater. "Your father had a minor accident and was taken to the hospital where Mom works, so I will be away for a while." As he read the note, Kaoru's heart tightened. What did Mom mean by an accident? Was Dad hurt? He started to sweat. But after deciding to read the rest of the note, he felt a bit relieved. I don't know all the details yet, but your dad is very strong, so he will be okay. I have cooked your favorite chicken curry, eat it when you are hungry. There is also a cake in the fridge. Mom will call later when I know more about the situation. The end of the note had Tomiko's classic smiling self-portrait, which made Kaoru feel lighter. Going to his room, he looked at the portrait of his father displayed on the bookshelf, thinking, it will be okay, right? The photo was taken when Kaoru visited his father's workplace during a social studies trip, with Kaoru in front and his father's hand on his shoulder. Kaoru's father, Tasuku, worked at the West Nagoya Bureau, and it was the first time Kaoru had experienced his father's real job. After being captivated by stories from his father's colleagues about how he bravely and strongly overcame crises, always leading everyone, Kaoru began to truly respect Tasuku from the bottom of his heart. Tasuku had a saying, don't do anything by halves, so he was often very strict with Kaoru when he slacked off in his studies or sports. But on special occasions, such as wedding anniversaries or birthdays, he would act like a typical Nagoya resident, lavishly buying extravagant gifts. His relationship with Tomiko was also wonderful. Whenever the family went on trips, they would surely take photos with Kaoru, and even snap some just the two of them. For instance, Tomiko would hold on to Tasuku's arm, or Tasuku would show off his muscles by carrying Tomiko princess style, and they still maintained the romantic affection of their dating days. Even as a husband, Tasuku made sure not to do things by halves. Kaoru often felt embarrassed by his parents' affectionate gestures, but at the same time, he was very happy and proud of what his father did for the family. That morning, as Tasuku was making scrambled eggs with cheese and tomatoes, he told Kaoru, it's going to be a bit hot for long sleeves today. When Tomiko worked night shifts, Tasuku took care of breakfast for Kaoru. Dad, you won't come home late today, will you? Right before heading to school, Kaoru had put on his backpack and asked his father that question. Tasuku had been coming home late recently, so Kaoru was a bit worried. Of course. Didn't Komatsu's team win yesterday? Today Kaku Genji will show up. I have to be home by 6 to make sure Hanshin doesn't win another game. Huh? That's not right. Ha 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 ha. I know. Don't worry, I have a surprise for you, so just wait. Oh my. See you later, Dad. Be careful. Watch out for cars. Kaoru dashed off shouting, yes, thinking, oh, Dad is always like this, with a smile as he walked towards the school's roll call area, without looking back. Those were the last words between the father and son. By evening, there had still been no contact from Tomiko. Overwhelmed with worry, Kaoru ran to the hospital, and Tomiko was about to call home from the nurse's station. Seeing Tomiko's exhausted face, Kaoru's heart rate increased. Catching that look, Tomiko slowly approached a paralyzed Kaoru before suddenly hugging him. Then she began to speak. I'm sorry. There was nothing more we could do. We couldn't save your father. No. It can't be. Why? Why? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was all that Tomiko could say. Walking down the cold, dimly lit fabric-covered hallway to the morgue, Tasuku's silent body lay before Kaoru. An accident had occurred at a construction site, causing a cave-in that triggered an underground water eruption, flooding the sewers and sweeping along many workers there. Tasuku had died trying to rescue them. On Tasuku's desk at the police station were 3 tickets for a Giants game scheduled for June 5 at the Nagoya Baseball Stadium. They were season tickets that were extremely hard to get. Kaoru cried in front of his father's cold body. Tomiko continued to hold back her tears. It seemed she wanted to appear strong for her child, so she remained steadfast throughout the funeral preparations, during the funeral itself, and towards the priest and attendees. When she saw her mother not crying, Kaoru felt she should do the same. But when it came time for the cremation and farewells, Tomiko burst into tears as if a dam inside her had been unleashed. She no longer cared about the gaze of others, clinging to the coffin, crying, and driving away anyone who tried to console her. She even went as far as to request canceling the cremation. Eventually, a relative pulled her away to allow the cremation to continue. Throughout that time, Kaoru stood silently in shock, witnessing Tomiko's descent into such a state. However, Kaoru had never paid attention to such scenes before. After that day, Tomiko continued to cry alone all night. Kaoru pretended not to notice and continued to behave as usual, but seeing his strong mother in such agony had a profound impact on him. Upon entering high school, Kaoru decided to follow his father's will and become a police officer. At that time, there was a girl he had his eye on, but every time he thought about advancing further in the relationship, memories of his mother's tears resurfaced, causing him pain. Perhaps he had taken it too seriously, but Kaoru always avoided loving others too much, fearing the pain of losing them. It grew to the point where he forgot the origin of that mindset, and then he forced himself to distance himself from others illogically. And even after becoming a police officer, he was still bound by that pain, continuing to keep his distance from other girls. Despite the accusations of arrogance behind his back, he didn't care, nor did he defend himself. Not doing anything half-heartedly. That was Ichijo's way of life. When Ichijo ordered his fourth sake, Sugita was considering which type to choose for his eighth shochu. He always appeared to have a good alcohol tolerance when drinking beer, but today he was drinking exceptionally fast. Though he wasn't flushed yet, it seemed he was drinking to get drunk rather than to enjoy. Finally, he also ordered all the accompanying dishes on the menu, and after finishing eating and ordering the finest beef, he stood up and went to the restroom. Upon returning, he sighed and slumped down on the sofa. Finally, he looked at Ichijo and began to talk, a crucial witness to the recent oxygen chamber cases. Finally, they came to the main topic, Ichijo thought. He suspected Sugita hadn't invited him just for casual conversation, since he asked him out for drinks. He wasn't sure if it was related to personal matters or issues related to the case, and then it turned out to be the latter. But Ichijo had a bad feeling about it. The cases, are they not accidents? Aren't they? Yeah. At this point, we can consider them as such. But there are some strange aspects about them that make me feel like they're all murder cases, and the news hasn't spread widely. What are those? Take a look at these. Sugita handed Ichijo classified documents. The first thing written was a list of victims. They were listed in chronological order corresponding to the occurrence of the accidents. There are a lot of zeros. That was the first thing that caught Ichijo's attention. The times of the accidents were recorded, and the information confirmed by the families present at the time was highlighted. Besides that, there were many estimated times, with some margins of error. The most surprising thing was that all the highlighted times had 00. For the accidents that happened in front of outsiders, no connection was found between them and the victims, yet all those accidents occurred at 00. And for the accidents without 00 in the recorded time, they were times like 57 or 53, basically 10 minutes before or after the 00 mark. Sugita-san, could this mean? Yeah, that's right. There's a possibility that all these accidents occurred at 2000. Take a look at the next page. Flipping the page, Ichijo saw a grid chart of 24/7 with the days of the week on the horizontal axis and the hours of the day on the vertical axis. For example, if an accident happened at 6 o'clock on Monday, the square at the intersection of the 6 o'clock column and Monday row would be filled in. Times that were not 00 were rounded to the nearest 00 hour. When all the times were filled in on the chart, a very surprising result was revealed. There were no duplicates at all, and about half of the squares were filled. It might be expected that accidents would be less likely to occur at night and more likely to occur during the day, but the results didn't match that assumption at all. On the other hand, there were no accidents that duplicated both the day and the hour. Could someone be trying to fill in all the squares in the shortest amount of time? It's impossible. It's like accidents are part of a game. Ichijo was startled to hear that. A game. Yes, a game. Unpleasant memories resurfaced. 13 years ago, at the beginning of summer, unknown life form 13 had said. The game is just a game. There is no other meaning. That was the most straightforward explanation for the Gurongi's motive. After the series of accidents seemed to be based on that statement, Sugita could smell the scent of the Gurongi. If that's true, then the Gurongi have impersonated that important witness. Yes. But there is no solid evidence, just my intuition. But Sugita, when Godai defeated unidentified life form 0, the Gurongi should have been wiped out. These incidents are just special accidents, not necessarily impossible. Some even think it would be fun to mimic their crimes. But if you look at the photo of the important witness's corpse in this series of cases, I think you'll understand what I'm thinking. Looking at the photo Sugita presented, Ichijo could hardly believe his eyes. A large chunk of flesh was carved out of the abdomen, as if someone was trying to take away that part of the body. This is. Even though there hasn't been an official autopsy yet, it still doesn't look normal in any way. It's absurd that someone would go to such lengths. However, if that person was trying to retrieve the stone inside. It sounds far-fetched, but such a tactic would be impossible if it were just imitating the Gurongi. But there was a case where genitalia was cut from a dead body, right? It was a bizarre case that caused a lot of chaos, like the Abe Sata incident. But then it was concluded that it was caused by a house cat due to hunger. Yes, a game. Unpleasant memories resurfaced. 13 years ago, at the beginning of summer, unknown life form 13 had said. The game is just a game. There is no other meaning. That was the most straightforward explanation for the Gurongi's motive. After the series of accidents seemed to be based on that statement, Sugita could smell the scent of the Gurongi. If that's true, then the Gurongi have impersonated that important witness. Yes. But there is no solid evidence, just my intuition. But Sugita, when Godai defeated unidentified life form 0, the Gurongi should have been wiped out. These incidents are just special accidents, not necessarily impossible. Some even think it would be fun to mimic their crimes. But if you look at the photo of the important witness's corpse in this series of cases, I think you'll understand what I'm thinking. Looking at the photo Sugita presented, Ichijo could hardly believe his eyes. A large chunk of flesh was carved out of the abdomen, as if someone was trying to take away that part of the body. This is. Even though there hasn't been an official autopsy yet, it still doesn't look normal in any way. It's absurd that someone would go to such lengths. However, if that person was trying to retrieve the stone inside. It sounds far-fetched, but such a tactic would be impossible if it were just imitating the Gurongi. But there was a case where genitalia was cut from a dead body, right? It was a bizarre case that caused a lot of chaos, like the Abe Sata incident. But then it was concluded that it was caused by a house cat due to hunger. No, it still doesn't add up. If it was Gurongi instead of Nakata, sooner or later his relatives or colleagues would surely notice something unusual. And if it were Gurongi, they would commit the crimes as monstrous beings. You're absolutely right. That's the dilemma I'm facing when trying to connect them, Sugita said while rubbing his bald head. But 3 years ago, Nakata suffered severe burns to his face in a traffic accident and had surgery to heal the wounds. It seems that afterward he was traumatized for a while. It could be due to shock after the accident, or he just used this opportunity to observe his surroundings. If at that time a Gurongi with a similar body structure or appearance took his place opportunistically, and then focused on studying the environment and circumstances. The two fell into a bitter silence, Sugita finishing his last shochu. Anyway, Nakata is no longer here. I feel sorry for the victim, but what I'm truly concerned about is not that. That's right. Ichijo redirected his thoughts elsewhere. If this is the Gurongi's killing game, it means there won't be just one participant. That's indeed the case. That night, Ichijo returned to his 2-bedroom apartment in Sendaji after 2 a.m. It was a low-rise 4-story apartment building with an elevator, but Ichijo always used the stairs. He felt uncomfortable from the alcohol and the heaviness in his body, with only his head being the active part, so the journey back to his room felt much longer than usual. Entering the apartment, Ichijo immediately slumped into the sofa in the living room, but then stood up and took a shower, then entered his study with wet hair and powered on his computer. When Ichijo returned to his apartment by taxi, he received a call. Sorry for bothering you so early, but I just received some interesting information. I'll send it to you, so make sure to check it out. Opening the email, Ichijo downloaded Sugita's message. It was classified information related to the recent chaos caused by the Bumblebee incident a few days ago. Initially, it occurred in Kyoto, then spread to Mie, Aichi, and Gifu prefectures, where the bee's poison caused numerous casualties. Many people suffered from allergic shock, with up to 9 deaths in a single day. The average casualty rate due to bumblebees per year over the past 10 years was about 20. So it's fair to say that the figure obtained this time is very high. What's even more surprising is that although the casualty rate due to bumblebees only accounted for about 5% of the population aged 30 and under, this time the figure rose to about 80%. Even the local authorities expressed concern about such incidents. Shocked by this news, Sugita immediately filed a petition to the authorities, requesting a reassessment to see if there were any suspicious factors. While working, he received a call from a doctor at Mito Nagoya Hospital, who had examined several victims. His small finding was quite surprising. The victims only had one wound on the front of their right arms, along with tissue from some creature stuck in the wound. Normally, bumblebees don't leave stingers behind after an attack. If that's the case, what could it be? After receiving that report, Sugita found 4 other victims before they were cremated, and upon investigation, the tissue was found on each victim. The tissue samples were sent to the Aichi Research Institute for further study, and the results were even more mysterious than what had happened before. A jellyfish. Ichijo muttered unconsciously, then reread the causes of death of the victims. This season was not suitable for going to the beach. Ichijo didn't remember any victims going to the beach. It was absurd that the poison of an aquatic creature was found here. Suddenly, Ichijo's phone rang. It was from Sugita. Have you read it? Yes, I have. Nevertheless, I still don't know how we should handle these things. It's impossible for a jellyfish to wander outside the sea, right? Jellyfish sometimes drift around river mouths, but as far as I know, there's no such thing in Gifu. Wait a minute. Sugita replied sharply. Once when I stayed at a hot spring in Takayama, they served me a dish called mountain jellyfish for dinner. He was talking about a special kind of fern that was dried from the head, then rehydrated and pickled, a delicacy in those areas. This is not the time for jokes. Sorry, I just wanted to lighten the mood a bit. I know. At first, it was just a gut feeling, but now I can't help but be sure. It's really hard to face that truth. The cold smile of a woman suddenly appeared in Ichijo's mind. She had a rose tattoo on her forehead. That was unidentified life form B1. She didn't directly participate in the killing game, but always observed the participants, sometimes imposing punishments. When she saw Ichijo and his colleagues shooting at the Gurongi, she spoke to them in Japanese. Rinto has changed, hasn't he? That was an allusion to the current human race and also the descendants of Rinto. Ultimately, she said that humans had evolved to be like the Gurongi. It also affirmed that humans had become a species like the Gurongi, all participating in the slaughter game. Of course, Ichijo was furious with B1, she spoke those words as if they were the truth. However, at the same time, Ichijo also pondered the possibility of what she said accurately describing the future. As if to dispel that doubt, Ichijo shot at B1. She was hit by a nerve-damaging bullet from Ichijo, and B1 sank into the deep-sea trench. The face of the woman was sporting a sinister smile, whispering inaudibly, then slowly disappearing from sight. Until now, Ichijo had always questioned her words. And no body of B1 was ever found at the bottom of the sea. Later, evidence of the death of the woman was discovered in the form of pieces of climbing roses scattered throughout the Tokyo Bay Area, but even they didn't account for a third of B1's body mass. Despite confirmation of her death, Ichijo's innermost thoughts had never ceased to worry for 13 years. He suspected that perhaps she was still hiding somewhere out there, waiting to see if humanity would fall into the conclusion she had predicted. A few days later, Ichijo calmly jogged past the Hanzomon police station in sweat-drenched attire. As long as he had time, he would stick to his daily routine of stretching at Hibiya Park and then jogging. He would loop around the Imperial Palace, head to Hanzomon from Kadanshida, pass through Nagatacho and Kinakunazaka, circle around the Crown Prince's Palace, then head to the National Stadium, loop around the surrounding gardens, come back straight through Aoyama, pass through Akahaka Mitsuku to reach the Sakuradaman police station, which marked the end of his 15 kilometers run. Feeling adrenaline coursing through his body, he recalled Sugita's final words on the phone that night. The investigation has not been officially considered yet, but I want to get started right away. I'll handle the arrangements, so can you help me? After all, you're probably more familiar with unidentified life forms than anyone else. And besides, I found the perfect partner for you. From the Nagano division. Ichijo had no idea who that person was. Sugita brushed off Ichijo's inquiry with a simple, well, just wait. When reminiscing about Nagano, the first person Ichijo thought of was Abisawa. Over time, he had been called Oakapple because he had cornered countless criminals. Even though he was Ichijo's senior, it was hard for him to consider him as a partner. Ichijo recalled working with many inspectors in Nagano, but he always kept his distance from others, so there was really no one close to him. Just wait. Ichijo suddenly remembered one of his subordinates, Kamayama Tsurumaru. He was a bit odd, but perhaps he had accumulated enough experience to become an inspector. No, that can't be. He would send emails or make phone calls too enthusiastically if he were in that position. Ichijo gave up on figuring out who it was and continued jogging. Ichijo returned to the police station, took a shower, and then went to the public welfare office at 7:30 a.m. He reviewed the information sent from other departments and then went to Section 1. The day before, there was a senseless murder case related to an illegal herbalist in the Shibuya district, leading many police officers to rush to investigate at the Criminal Investigation Unit of the main office. Navigating through the busy crowd, Ichijo reached Special Criminal Investigation Team 4, not only surprised by Sugida's absence, but also the absence of anyone in the room. The Special Investigation Team specialized in handling serious cases such as extortion, corporate harassment, and bombings. Team 4 was responsible for unusually peculiar cases, so they often collaborated with other teams in Section 1 whenever there were no cases within their expertise. Ichijo wondered if the members were assigned to help with the senseless murder case. Then Ichijo rang out from Sugida's direction as he returned from an emergency meeting in the large conference room. Sorry for the commotion. The frequency of marijuana cases has been decreasing here, but this time, that other troublesome drug has appeared. Oh, you mean Lionel? Lionel was a new, non-addictive fatigue-relieving drug approved by the Ministry of Health and Welfare about 6 months ago. Although it didn't contain addictive substances, it still provided a euphoric feeling and quickly became popular among young people. Some conservative thoughts argued that it was no different from methamphetamine, but many athletes and entertainers praised it, promoting it on television, along with numerous blog posts and even official medical advertisements beginning to air. I'm naturally stubborn, so my daughter warned me to stay away from it. Please come in. Sugida led him into a small office, with steel bookshelves almost only holding a few documents, along with boxes of newspapers scattered across a long table. Since I started investigating this case based solely on intuition, the budget is tight. Although I may be a little strapped for cash, I really look forward to working with you. So, first of all, you should eliminate your wasteful spending. Wow. That stings, but you're absolutely right. As Sugida chuckled at Ichijo's joke, a knock on the door accompanied by "sorry" was heard, and a young woman walked in carrying a large hardcover box. Specifically, a female inspector with 2 boxes, but her face was obscured, leaving Ichijo unsure of who she was. This is your partner, Ichijo. No, calling her a partner is a bit, let's get started. The girl placed the boxes on the table, items brought in with more finesse than her figure would suggest, and quickly straightened out her wrinkled outfit. She's one of our rising star rookies. Now, please introduce yourself. Yes, sir. The girl nervously stepped out from behind the box and greeted Ichijo. You are. Although she had short hair, Ichijo had seen that face before. I'm Natsume Mika, assigned to Special Investigation Team 4 of Section 1. I'm very pleased to work with you, sir. After expressing her respect and concern, she spoke to Ichijo with a hint of nervousness. Do you remember me, sir? Of course, it's been a long time since I went to your father's grave to talk about solving the case. Yes, sir. So that's it. You've become a police officer. Yes, sir. Ichijo could see a myriad of mixed emotions on her face as she nodded. You've grown up, a bit less than I expected? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. Perhaps it was because Mika looked hardly any different from when she was 14 years old, but for some reason, Ichijo felt comfortable talking to her. It's okay. Since then, I've realized I probably won't grow another 2 centimeters taller, even though I'm 27 now. If it weren't for this job, I might have been able to wear high heels. No, it's not like that. You've matured a lot. I was really surprised. Thank you for saying that to me. But I want people to judge me based on my abilities, not my appearance. As she smiled, the innocence from back then shone through. If she were wearing a high school uniform, she could pass off as a third-year student without any difficulty. Ichijo found it hard to believe that the young woman standing before him was actually a police officer. So let me reintroduce myself. I'm Ichijo from the Public Welfare Division of Section 3. Pleased to work with you, colleague. Ichijo took out his business card, prompting Mika to hurriedly take out hers and say, "Oh, yes." Sugita scolded her. "You silly girl, you should have taken yours out first." "Yes, I'm sorry." "Geez, how many years has it been?" 5 years. Mika should have gotten used to the workplace by now, but clearly, there was still some apprehension. Ichijo took the opportunity to offer her some help. "You probably started working here around the time I went to the US, right?" "Yes, sir. Actually, I've seen you a few times since joining here. It's just that I never had the chance to say hello, so I'm sorry for being late like this." In response, as Mika bowed as low as she could to show respect, Ichijo also bowed his head. No, it's my fault for not noticing you." 13 years ago, after the unidentified living being case ended, Ichijo returned to the Central Police Department from Nagano and became the head of Section 1. A few years later, he transferred to the Organized Crime Countermeasures Bureau, then went abroad to study international counterterrorism. He then returned to Japan and moved to his current position. On the other hand, after graduating from university, Mika began her career as one of the few female officers and joined the Shibuya District 1 police force. Her rank was lieutenant as she gained experience working at the police station. Then she transferred to the white-collar crime unit the following year. After researching information gathering at the Section 2 Division of the Organized Crime Countermeasures Bureau Section 1, she voluntarily chose to transfer to the Nagano Security Office, only to return to the Central Police Department 3 years later. 13 years ago, when Mika's father was murdered by unidentified living being number 0, she was disappointed with the slow progress of the case, so she went to the Central Police Department with her mother. Unfortunately, at that time unidentified living being number 14 attacked, making it difficult for Ichijo to manage. Things got worse when Mika went to Jonan University, thinking that no one cared about her father's death and intending to commit suicide. She ended up at the Futsu coast in Chiba Prefecture. The only clue to identify her was the seashell from her necklace that Yusuke found, and he found the innocent girl safe and sound. As the sun set, Ichijo ran towards Mika and sighed in relief, "Thank goodness you're safe." Mika thought she would surely be scolded, and all the tension disappeared when she cried, "I'm sorry." He still remembered those sparkling tears, which made him feel happy to be able to protect the future of a little girl, more than defeating number 14. It also reminded him of the weight behind a police officer's responsibility. I wonder what made her choose the path of a police officer. The next day, Ichijo and Mika traveled to Gifu Prefecture via the Nozomi line at around 6 o'clock. Following yesterday's meeting, Sugita had requested them to investigate the victims of the corn borer incident. Surprisingly, this led to quite an unexpected development. "Excuse me, sir, may I ask something?" Mika approached Sugita straightforwardly. What's the matter?" "The reason we're investigating is because we found jellyfish tissue in the defensive shock wounds of the corn borer victims, isn't it?" "That's correct. But none of the victims have been to the sea. And jellyfish are unlikely to appear in areas far from the coast like this." "That's not entirely true, sir." "Huh?" "After some research, I found out there's a species of jellyfish in other areas besides the sea." "What?" "It's the freshwater jellyfish, sir, the only jellyfish species that live in Japan's freshwater areas." Sugita was taken aback and then turned to look at Ichijo. In his 50 years of life, he had never heard of such a species. Realizing that all his deductions might collapse right there, he felt his blood starting to boil. He had even gone through that trouble when arranging tasks at the Public Welfare Division. Ichijo felt disappointed, and Mika continued with a smile, but they are extremely small, with an average length of 2 centimeters, making them difficult to see. Their venom is also not strong enough to significantly affect humans, so freshwater jellyfish are almost irrelevant to this case, sir. Wow. Don't scare me like that. I'm sorry, sir, I just thought it's important for the investigation details to be accurate. I understand. You're doing great. Sugita gently patted Mika on the shoulder, praising her for her extensive knowledge. The report we received last night. Mika and Ichijo arrived at Tokyo Station the next morning, reviewing their information. After reviewing the photos of the victims, we found signs of multiple contact dermatitis fiber spots, which were previously overlooked. It's highly likely that the wounds were caused by some thin stinger-like substance wrapping around the victims for a moment. I speculate that poison may have been injected during a handshake, for example. With the iPad in hand, Mika did a great job organizing the information they had collected so far. Ichijo had witnessed it on the bullet train, and he was extremely impressed. Her investigation summary was very accurate, always updating with new information about unanswered questions. She had a straightforward gaze and a diligent work attitude. Ichijo thought she had truly become a police officer and looked at her with immense pride. Then Mika turned to him. Do you need any further investigation, sir? No, by the way, could you share your perspective with me? Did you notice anything after synthesizing all the information together? What did I notice? Mika seemed to be at a loss. Well, that's to be expected, Ichijo thought. For investigative police officers, insight is formed from experience. In addition to the ability to organize information effectively, investigators need to develop intuition based on what they have experienced. Otherwise, the next step in solving the case will be very difficult. While Ichijo was still pondering, Mika hesitated and spoke to him. I'm not really sure. Huh? No, it's just that, I feel like something's not right, like there's a missing piece. What is it? If there's any specific issue that concerns you, we should look into it. I'm not thinking too far ahead yet. Mika fell silent once again and suddenly made a face as if she had just remembered something. She looked around the train to make sure no one was listening and then carefully spoke to Ichijo. Well, I feel like we should go back and investigate the victim's activities. Why is that? The official reports only have information about the exact day the patients died. It might be enough if it's just from shock, but if it's unidentified, then it doesn't rule out the possibility that some kind of antigen had developed inside the patients beforehand. For example, 13 years ago, any patients exposed to number 41 all had modified needles inside them for about 4 days or longer. Mika deliberately spoke in a roundabout way so that others wouldn't understand clearly. In fact, she was referring to the case of unidentified living being number 41, the hedgehog-like creature. This is an example of a crime with a time delay, as he injected a super small needle into the victim's brain, and then the needle changed shape after 4 days, causing the victim's death. That's true. Now let's go find out in detail what they did during that week. The Nozomi train that the two boarded arrived in Nagoya exactly at 7:36. They would have to switch to the Chua line before reaching their destination at Aina-Yamaoka Road, but the next train would take an additional 20 minutes to arrive. Ichijo, let's run. Huh? Before Ichijo could ask why, Mika immediately started running. He had to follow her, thinking that Mika might be planning to catch the Line 10 train, stopping at the railway junction. However, she continued past Line 5 and 6, then 3 and 4, finally stopping at Lines 1 and 2 heading towards Tokyo. Natsum. Where are you going? She had stopped at a Kishima noodle stand. Ha, ha. When you come to Nagoya, you have to eat kishimen. After researching, this is the top-rated spot. Is that so? Ichijo stood there blinking in surprise. Mika went in and ordered the exact dish she had researched, fried kishimen. The main attraction was the dish being fried on the spot rather than pre-made. Ichijo thought typical youth as he watched Mika eat tempura for breakfast, then he also ordered some kishimen noodles for himself to fill his stomach. He might not have time for lunch due to this investigation. Wow, this is so delicious. Ichijo, have you ever had kishimen before? Ah. What's wrong? Your hometown is in Nagoya, right? And here I am, bragging about it. Mika's disappointment was evident. Ichijo finished the remaining dashi soup and smiled, saying, "It's okay. It's been a while since I've had it, so I'm really happy to eat it again. I used to ride my bike to school, so I haven't had kishimen at the station since elementary school. I remember going to eat with my dad." "Really? Oh, that's lucky. Oh, it's already 7:54. We need to hurry." "Oh, thank you for the meal. It was really delicious." Mika burst with energy and smiled at the restaurant staff. The joy that Ichijo hadn't seen in years helped him forget the impending reality, even if just for a moment. At the Aina station, a police officer from the Aina Police Department was waiting for them with a patrol car. They could reach Yamaoka town via the Akechi Railway, but it would waste a lot of precious time. After 30 minutes along the Yamai Road, they arrived in Yamaoka town. Currently, this was the home of the nearest victim, 74-year-old Watarai Kyo. Stepping out of the patrol car, they were greeted by terraced fields filled with canton leaves. This was known as the #1 canton growing area in Japan. Despite it being summer, they still grew canton in refrigerators. Watarai Kyo hailed from a family of canton farmers, and she had spent her whole life in this town. Ichijo and Mika talked to her son, Watarai Akio, 55 years old, but he still couldn't accept his mother's death. "I talked to the Aina Police Department, but I still can't believe it. It's too sudden. Is it true that Ms. Kyo didn't go anywhere on the day she passed away?" Mika asked based on the report received from the Aina Police Department. "Yeah, she didn't go anywhere. A few days before, my mom went to Nagoya to play gateball. On that day and the day before, she just sat in the living room and avoided everyone. Then when my mom and I came back to have lunch together, it happened suddenly. She kept saying she was too cold, while her grandson was about to start his summer vacation. Then, red rashes started appearing on my mom's face, making her face turn red and difficult to breathe. At this point, Akio began to cry out of sorrow. Mika bit her lip, while Ichijo remained serious. I've never seen anyone as energetic as my mom. She always said she would be the next Kinsan Jinsan. My mom definitely could have done it. Mika couldn't find words, then Ichijo continued on her behalf, we're very sorry for your loss, and continued questioning. Do you know if Ms. Kyo ever went anywhere outside Nagoya? About a week before she passed away? I don't think my mom went anywhere. Her daily routine was to walk the dog, then walk about 5 kilometers to have tea at the local water station, then return home. By Thursday, my mom would go play gateball. Did she ever mention anything about being bitten by anything? Like feeling pain after going into a pond, for example. My mom was very active, but not to the extent of jumping into a pond. Why do people from Tokyo ask so many strange questions? Oh, the news hasn't been released yet, but we're investigating whether these cases were really caused by the corn borer. We're trying to consider various possibilities. Mika opened her mouth again. Sir, could you tell us where she went in Nagoya? My mom went to the castle, the TV tower, and maybe the Usu area. He was referring to one of Japan's most prominent shopping centers, centered around Usu Kannon Temple. There are maid cafes like those in Akihabara, along with many electronic game arcades that attract many young tourists. Watarai Akio told them everything he knew, but there was nothing particularly useful. She seemed like a healthy old lady. Mika soliloquized on the subway, heading back. It's hard to accept someone's sudden death like that. Yeah. They began to think about their own fathers, and spent a while gazing at the passing scenery. After returning to Nagoya Station, just before noon, they immediately boarded the Kansai line, heading straight towards Kuwana. Renting a car outside the station, they continued their investigation of the remaining 8 victims, starting from the residence of the 7th victim. Only one of them lived in Kuwana City, while the rest were in Nagoya City, but they could drive to a branch near Nagoya Station and park there, which would save them a lot of expenses. During the 5-hour investigation, they still hadn't found any significant commonalities from the testimonies gathered. The remaining victims were all males, with 4 in their 20s, 2 in their 30s, and 1 in his 40s. The victims in their 20s and 30s were all unmarried, and in some cases, their daily activities were unclear, so the investigation would take more time. He was referring to one of Japan's most prominent shopping centers, centered around Usu Kannon Temple. There are maid cafes like those in Akihabara, along with many electronic game arcades that attract many young tourists. Watarai Akio told them everything he knew, but there was nothing particularly useful. She seemed like a healthy old lady. Mika soliloquized on the subway, heading back. It's hard to accept someone's sudden death like that. Yeah. They began to think about their own fathers, and spent a while gazing at the passing scenery. After returning to Nagoya Station, just before noon, they immediately boarded the Kansai line, heading straight towards Kuwana. Renting a car outside the station, they continued their investigation of the remaining 8 victims, starting from the residence of the 7th victim. Only one of them lived in Kuwana City, while the rest were in Nagoya City, but they could drive to a branch near Nagoya Station and park there, which would save them a lot of expenses. During the 5-hour investigation, they still hadn't found any significant commonalities from the testimonies gathered. The remaining victims were all males, with 4 in their 20s, 2 in their 30s, and 1 in his 40s. The victims in their 20s and 30s were all unmarried, and in some cases, their daily activities were unclear, so the investigation would take more time. But there are only 2 victims like that, right? That's not a lot. No, there are 4. 4? The 6th victim we investigated, Oyuma, is one of them. And Akashi, the one we just investigated, probably is too. What makes you think that? They all had the same type of cell phone strap. Cell phone strap? Mika showed Ichijo the photo she took in their rooms. Indeed, the victims shared the same cell phone strap, but they didn't have any logos or designs indicating they were fans of Togai Brin. There was a small decorative bell inside the strap. It's a rare item that only members of Togai Brin's fan club can receive at her national events. Ordinary people wouldn't think it's related to Rin. For those who don't want their admiration for this girl to be obvious, it's common to attach this strap. People like Ichijo had a hard time understanding this. Perhaps Mika's youth helped her understand such information more than him. But even so, there are only 4 people. If it's just a random coincidence, it seems a bit much, but considering her level of fame, it's not unusual, do you think? If we investigate the other victims' rooms more thoroughly, we'll probably find at least one of her CDs or a similar item. She has a lot of fans, but maybe because they're afraid of how their family or friends will think about their admiration for this girl, they've hidden everything recognizable. Even Watarai Kyo, from Kuwana? That's correct. She's the only one who doesn't match this. Mika suddenly softened her tone and continued quietly down Ashikuji-dori Street. But not long after, she faced Ichijo and complained. "There's actually one more thing." All the victims' names tend to be strange." Mika took out her smartphone and showed Ichijo the screen, pointing to the list of victims. "If we arrange them in the order of their deaths, you'll see Akashi, Aoyama, Kimura. Do you notice anything? There's nothing special. Red, aka blue, AO, and yellow, Ki. Those names follow the sequence of traffic lights. Aka in Akashi. AO in Aoyama. Ki in Kimura. Do you think this case resembles the one of uncertainty? So they're following the order of traffic lights? It's undeniable. But it could just be a random coincidence. If that's all, it's probably just a coincidence. Does that mean there's more?" Togai Brin's debut single is titled Secret Signal. Understanding the connection. In a moment Ichijo felt like something was happening here. But he immediately calmed down. "It's an interesting connection, but there are still 6 other victims?" Not long after, they arrived at the famous hotel where they were staying, overlooking Nijo Castle. After Mika researched on her smartphone, she suggested staying at this hotel, which offered an overnight stay program, quick room booking at affordable prices. Thanks to her, they found a hotel with larger and cheaper rooms than the business hotels. The garden inside gave a classic Japanese garden feel, providing a very pleasant atmosphere in the morning. If Ichijo were alone or accompanied by another male investigator, he would definitely not be able to go to places like this. Ichijo would stay at a hotel that matched his budget. After taking off his outer vest and tie, he let out a tired phew as he looked up at the ceiling and then sank into bed. Investigating with Mika, Ichijo felt a different kind of tension than usual. This was the first time he had investigated with a female investigator. He always kept a distance from women when investigating with male colleagues, so working with a woman this time made him feel strangely exhausted. Perhaps it was because of the relief from that tension that Ichijo continued to lie on the bed. Just then, the phone began to ring. It was from Mika. "If you're free, shall we go grab something to eat? There's nothing special. Red, aka blue, AO, and yellow, Ki. Those names follow the sequence of traffic lights. Aka in Akashi. AO in Aoyama. Ki in Kimura. Do you think this case resembles the one of uncertainty? So they're following the order of traffic lights? It's undeniable. But it could just be a random coincidence. If that's all, it's probably just a coincidence. Does that mean there's more?" Togai Brin's debut single is titled Secret Signal. Understanding the connection. In a moment Ichijo felt like something was happening here. But he immediately calmed down. "It's an interesting connection, but there are still 6 other victims?" Not long after, they arrived at the famous hotel where they were staying, overlooking Nijo Castle. After Mika researched on her smartphone, she suggested staying at this hotel, which offered an overnight stay program, quick room booking at affordable prices. Thanks to her, they found a hotel with larger and cheaper rooms than the business hotels. The garden inside gave a classic Japanese garden feel, providing a very pleasant atmosphere in the morning. If Ichijo were alone or accompanied by another male investigator, he would definitely not be able to go to places like this. Ichijo would stay at a hotel that matched his budget. After taking off his outer vest and tie, he let out a tired phew as he looked up at the ceiling and then sank into bed. Investigating with Mika, Ichijo felt a different kind of tension than usual. This was the first time he had investigated with a female investigator. He always kept a distance from women when investigating with male colleagues, So working with a woman this time made him feel strangely exhausted. Perhaps it was because of the relief from that tension that Ichijo continued to lie on the bed. Just then, the phone began to ring. It was from Mika. "If you're free, shall we go grab something to eat?" While chatting, Ichijo suddenly remembered the tracking bullets. It was a special type of bullet created by a member of the science division named Inokata Hikari, used when the unidentified living organisms cases exceeded control. Tiny GPS tracking devices would be embedded in these bullets, allowing information on the whereabouts of the unidentified living organisms to be tracked after being hit. In the past, it was an advanced technology. But today, that technology was commonplace in consumer products, mainly modern smartphones and many other things, allowing an ordinary person to find out where they were from a distance. Ichijo thought that Dr. Inokata was truly passionate about her work, so much so that she could even upgrade nanoscale technology. The image of Dr. Inokata's self-satisfaction came to mind, and Ichijo couldn't help but chuckle. Then they arrived at the obanzai-serving restaurant that Mika had chosen. They passed by the old-fashioned counter and sat down in the back, ordering some fried potatoes and simmered vegetables, then raising their glasses to toast with some fresh beer while they waited. Mika's petite hand circled the glass as if cradling it, and she happily drained it. Ichijo felt drawn to this scene and continued to observe her. Is something strange, or? Oh, no, it's nothing. It's just that I'm not used to seeing you as an adult. A child back then and now drinking beer like this, it's really strange to me. I'm sorry. No, it's okay. Really. I'm used to it now. Oh, really? Yes. Not long ago, I was at home and suddenly wanted to drink a little highball, but I couldn't go to the convenience store near my house, so I ended up going to a not-so-good store. Actually, it's quite far away. I happened to be wearing a dress, so people in there were like, "Is this kid really an adult?" So I just showed them my ID. Mika's smiling face when speaking brought a very innocent feeling, but in reality, she drank quite enthusiastically, finishing her beer before Ichijo and ordering some Japanese sake for the second round. They talked about small things like whether Mika still played the flute or not, or whether steamed buns should be eaten from the inside after splitting them in half. Whenever the conversation paused, Mika would suddenly lift her head as if there was something important to say, but then she would look down again and go back to sipping her small glass of sake. Ichijo wondered what was going on but decided to continue observing her. She had tried to hide her hesitation by drinking alcohol many times, but then she raised her face and spoke to Ichijo with a determined look in her eyes. "Ichijo-san, I'm really sorry." I always wanted to apologize to you, but in the end, I couldn't do it. I tried to write letters, but I could never convey my true feelings, so I ended up throwing them away. What is this about? You probably don't remember, but 13 years ago, after that flute rehearsal, I behaved very rudely towards you. Mika is referring to the time when she came to Tokyo to rehearse flute while she was still in the 8th grade, amidst an unidentified living organism murder case. Ichijo and Yusuke were both invited to the rehearsal, and they intended to attend. Since they planned to meet at the concert hall, Ichijo first went to a flower shop to buy a bouquet. Then Ichijo arrived earlier than Yusuke. But due to unfamiliarity, an unexpected incident occurred. On the way, Yusuke was affected by strong thoughts from number 0, leading to an injury. On the other hand, Ichijo got involved in a violent case that disrupted the rare peaceful moment he was about to enjoy. The case was related to the organizer of the rehearsal, a youth who was fired from a certain company, and he had kidnapped the company's director for revenge. In the end, Ichijo couldn't attend Mika's rehearsal and had to pursue the criminal. Then right after Mika left the concert hall, she witnessed Ichijo violently apprehending the criminal. A criminal who used a gun to injure some inspectors and dragged innocent people, Ichijo showed no mercy. It wasn't out of anger. This criminal was on the verge of going berserk, and if not apprehended decisively, Ichijo would definitely face resistance. So with a cool head, Ichijo shot the culprit and quietly subdued him, using force to arrest him. But Mika was extremely horrified by that scene. In her eyes, Ichijo's appearance was the same, but at the same time, he was someone completely different. As if he were an object controlled by an external force, and she was extremely scared. A kind Ichijo before the rehearsal seemed to have been possessed by something. Then he reached out to Mika with a smile, but was rejected. And she returned to Nagano without speaking to him anymore. I remember that day very clearly. In the end, I made you see my terrifying face. But Ichijo did that to protect you and everyone else. Even though you know that, you still refused me. It's natural to be shocked by that scene. Then Godai took me back to Tokyo. Yeah. I told him my true feelings. I said you were really scary, that you had become completely different. Yeah. Then Godai said, but that's the real Ichijo. That's just another aspect of him. Even when Ichijo is scared and doesn't want to, he knows there are times when he has to do that. Godai, huh? At that time, I was really confused about why he explained like that. Anyway, if he had just said that's not the real Ichijo, I would have felt much lighter. I see. After that, Godai continued, but laughing is also a part of Ichijo. That's right, it's Godai. Ichijo said, reminiscing and smiling. No matter who it was, Yusuke Godai would never lie, and always accept them with his good heart. Listening to Mika, Ichijo could vaguely feel the feelings he had when Yusuke was still here. To be honest. This time Ichijo apologized. It's also my fault for not being able to apologize to you during that time. It's not your fault, how could you control that? Actually, at that time, I was just causing trouble for everyone. Once again, I really apologize. Facing Mika clasping her hands on the table and bowing deeply, Ichijo also hurriedly bowed. No, I'm sorry too. The server brought the il tempura dish and stood awkwardly, not knowing what to do with the continuous apologies. Sorry, here's the il tempura. Oh, thank you. Both Ichijo and Mika quickly responded, then they suddenly burst into laughter at the synchronicity. Then they started eating the il tempura while it was still hot and returned to cheerful conversation. Actually, before Ichijo found me on the beach, Godai did something really amazing. Huh? Do you know how to skip stones? Yes. That's when you throw cargo off a cargo ship. No, not that, I mean skipping stones on water and making them bounce up. Oh, when I was a kid, I used to play that all the time. Godai skipped stones, and boasted that he could make it bounce 7 times. At that beach? Yes. Anyway, it was impossible, right? The wind was very strong and there were a lot of waves. But if it was him, could he do it? That's right. And that stone skipping was really amazing. In my head, I thought, wow. I was completely stunned. All the troubles I had faced just flew away like that. Perhaps. Godai always looked very clever, like, see, I told you. You can imagine that. And then suddenly he said, just trust me. Oh, then I said, huh? What's happening? Yeah. At that moment, I was very confused about why he explained like that. Anyway, if he had just said that's not the real Ichijo, I would have felt much lighter. I see. After that, Godai continued, but laughing is also a part of Ichijo. That's right, it's Godai. Ichijo said, reminiscing and smiling. No matter who it was, Yusuke Godai would never lie, and always accept them with his good heart. Listening to Mika, Ichijo could vaguely feel the feelings he had when Yusuke was still here, to be honest. This time Ichijo apologized. It's also my fault for not being able to apologize to you during that time. It's not your fault, how could you control that? Actually, at that time, I was just causing trouble for everyone. Once again, I really apologize. Facing Mika clasping her hands on the table and bowing deeply, Ichijo also hurriedly bowed. No, I'm sorry too. The server brought the ill-tempered dish and stood awkwardly, not knowing what to do with the continuous apologies. Sorry, here's the eel tempura. Oh, thank you. Both Ichijo and Mika quickly responded, then they suddenly burst into laughter at the synchronicity. Then they started eating the eel tempura while it was still hot and returned to cheerful conversation. Actually, before Ichijo found me on the beach, Godai did something really amazing. Huh? Do you know how to skip stones? Yes. That's when you throw cargo off a cargo ship. No, not that, I mean skipping stones on water and making them bounce up. Oh, when I was a kid, I used to play that all the time. Godai skipped stones, and boasted that he could make it bounce 7 times. At that beach? Yes. Anyway, it was impossible, right? The wind was very strong and there were a lot of waves. But if it was him, could he do it? That's right. And that stone skipping was really amazing. In my head, I thought, wow. I was completely stunned. All the troubles I had faced just flew away like that. Perhaps. Godai always looked very clever, like, see, I told you. You can imagine that. And then suddenly he said, just trust me. Oh. Then I said, huh? What's happening? Yeah. At that moment, I was very confused about why he explained like that. Anyway, if he had just said that's not the real Ichijo, I would have felt much lighter. I see. After that, Godai continued, but laughing is also a part of Ichijo. That's right, it's Godai. Ichijo said, reminiscing and smiling. No matter who it was, Yusuke Godai would never lie, and always accept them with his good heart. Listening to Mika, Ichijo could vaguely feel the feelings he had when Yusuke was still here. To be honest. This time Ichijo apologized. It's also my fault for not being able to apologize to you during that time. It's not your fault, how could you control that? Actually, at that time I was just causing trouble for everyone. Once again, I really apologize. Facing Mika clasping her hands on the table and bowing deeply, Ichijo also hurriedly bowed. No, I'm sorry too. The server brought the ill-tempered dish and stood awkwardly, not knowing what to do with the continuous apologies. Sorry, here's the eel tempura. Oh, thank you. Both Ichijo and Mika quickly responded, then they suddenly burst into laughter at the synchronicity. Then they started eating the eel tempura while it was still hot and returned to cheerful conversation. Yeah. And then he replied with that same smile, when it's time to do what needs to be done, I'll do it. And that time will also come for you. I'm sure your father will always be watching over you until then. I see. Ichijo pondered those words for a moment. That was truly Godai's way of speaking. Even after that, when you faced other troubles like the entrance exam, you still remembered Godai's words and always encouraged yourself. Then after accumulating enough experience working at the Shinjuku Police Department and being called by Chief Sugita, I think that was the time Godai mentioned. So I think I have to try my best. Though she was speaking softly, Ichijo could see the determination behind her words. So Natsum and I can investigate together now, thanks to him. and drink sake together, right? Mika, with slightly flushed cheeks, laughed mischievously while emptying her sake cup. Then she poured some more sake into Ichijo's cup, then into her own, before leaning back and speaking to Ichijo again. But it's also thanks to you that everything has gone smoothly. Me? Yes. Do you still remember when you were in police school? At Kadaira? Yes. I thought if I became a police officer, I would also aim to be at the top. So I tried my best. That's great to hear. And then every teacher in the training programs always said the same thing. They all said that I had studied very well, but throughout the school's history, I only achieved the second highest score. Oh really? Don't play dumb. The person with the highest score in all the courses was still you. Me. Can you really not believe it? No. Back then, I just put all my effort into it every day. Oh. I really didn't think so. You're a legend in almost every field. You're exaggerating a bit. Yes, I'm exaggerating a bit. But I'm sure you're a great person. I wanted to beat you at least in one subject, but it was really difficult. And finally, during the internship, the instructor praised me for taking better crime scene photos. Was that the Firefly instructor? Yes, yes. So he already had that nickname when you were still in school? Of course. Anyway, it was you who gave him that nickname. Even after that, when you faced other troubles like the entrance exam, you still remembered Godai's words and always encouraged yourself. Then after accumulating enough experience working at the Shinjuku Police Department and being called by Chief Sugita, I think that was the time Godai mentioned. So I think I have to try my best. Though she was speaking softly, Ichijo could see the determination behind her words. So Natsum and I can investigate together now, thanks to him. And drink sake together, right? Mika, with slightly flushed cheeks, laughed mischievously while emptying her sake cup. Then she poured some more sake into Ichijo's cup, then into her own, before leaning back and speaking to Ichijo again. But it's also thanks to you that everything has gone smoothly. Me? Yes. Do you still remember when you were in police school? At Kadaira? Yes. I thought if I became a police officer, I would also aim to be at the top. So I tried my best. That's great to hear. And then every teacher in the training programs always said the same thing. They all said that I had studied very well, but throughout the school's history, I only achieved the second highest score. Oh really? Don't play dumb. The person with the highest score in all the courses was still you. Me. Can you really not believe it? No. Back then, I just put all my effort into it every day. Oh. I really didn't think so. You're a legend in almost every field. You're exaggerating a bit. Yes, I'm exaggerating a bit. But I'm sure you're a great person. I wanted to beat you at least in one subject, but it was really difficult. And finally, during the internship, the instructor praised me for taking better crime scene photos. Was that the Firefly instructor? Yes, yes. So he already had that nickname when you were still in school? Of course. Anyway, it was you who gave him that nickname.